Good evening, everybody, and welcome to New London High School. I'm class of 1972, and I'd like to thank the day and the league for sponsoring this event and to see such a large turnout. The interest in this race has certainly got the community buzzing. And tonight I'd like to offer a pledge that, as I look down the row here, that I will not take advantage of my political opponents and take advantage of their youth and inexperience and exploit it for political gain this evening. And I must give credit where credit is due for Ronald Reagan, 1984, Walter Mondale. But I would like to offer folks some things that I'm not in my opening statement here. I mean, I'm not going to write a 40-page tome to tell you about my thoughts about New London. I grew up here. I'm a New London guy. And
thank you. A minute is not a very long time. Mr. Perro.
Good evening. Electing me as your next mayor, you're going to get someone who's an experienced leader, someone who brings stability to our community. I understand what we're doing right within our departments. I understand what we need to adjust moving forward to make our government more efficient. As your mayor last year, I gave you a snapshot of what I would do to move our city forward. I brought the discussion of having a change of format of government, which I believe would be more responsive to you. Brought transparency to city government by bringing cameras into city council chambers, putting all the expenditures online so you can see what we spend your hard-earned dollars on. Actually reducing taxes in the city. Looking at a home ownership program, opening up ties with the Board of Education so we could have meetings together. As your mayor, one of my first acts will be to provide a budget to the City Council. It will not have a tax increase in it. I will also work with the board and the council to form new relationships going forward in the first few months. And on election night, I will be ready to lead this government. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mike? There's no applause during the debate. Thank you.
I also would like to thank everyone for coming this evening. And I know the reason you're here, and I appreciate that. I know why you're here. You're here to learn how to fill in the circle 1G and write the name Mike B. Please do not just write Mike B. But thank you for coming to learn about the process. All kidding aside, it's a serious time for New London. For the first time in almost 100 years, you get to choose who will lead this city for the next 4 years. As some would make you believe, including my favorite newspaper in New London, as well as some of my opponents, that I am a long shot. I can tell you with wholehearted honesty that we believe that I am the best shot for New London to turn that corner from prosperity into prosperity, from potential to prosperity. So I truthfully thank you for coming this evening. I really hope you enjoy this spirited debate, and I thank the day for holding this forum. Thank you.
Thank you. Lori.
Do these come walking out?
I'll take this.
Yeah, it does. Good evening. I'm Lori Hopkins Cavanaugh, and I'm very honored to be running for mayor of New London. I had this stored in me for a long time. I was born here in 1960, and I've watched my city decline from a city that had strong schools and great neighborhoods to a city that's in distress. I cannot bury my head in the sand, and I'm asking you to please consider my 4-year plan for mayor. I have a tremendous amount of business expertise, marketing expertise, and real estate and development expertise. I'd like to bring that to the table and implement this plan, and I believe that once you read it, you'll find it's the most comprehensive solution to our city's problems. I love New London, but I see that we're on a burning platform that needs to be addressed now. We don't have 4 years to wait, 4 years of decline. We need to change things immediately, and I'm your candidate to do that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Finizio.
Good evening. I thank the day and the League of Women Voters for sponsoring this debate and for all the candidates and for all of you for attending. When I entered this race, I entered it because I believe that New London needs to change. Not merely change as a slogan, not merely change as rhetoric, but change our policy priorities so that we can be the city that we all know we can be. So when I declared, I did put forward a detailed platform of what I would do if elected and held forums on each and every subpart of it. I've knocked on thousands of doors talking to New Londoners about the issues that affect you. I believe that getting a good person in this office is only half the battle. Having a clear sense of how we get to where we're going is equally important. That's why I've been pleased to engage in this debate. This will be the 13th or 14th debate that I've participated in, holding over 11 public forums on matters of issues of importance. I believe that I have charted the right course for how New London can become a new city.
Thank you very much. Mr. Lockwood.
Okay, I'll try to speak fast. Thank you very much for inviting us here this evening, and I want to do my opening a little differently. I want to remember Matthew Chu tonight, who just about a year ago lost his life here in New London. And I also want to talk about my idea. When I was sitting up at Riverside Park the other day, thinking of who I was going to elect for the next mayor, a young girl came up to me who was playing basketball, and she said, "Sir, are you going to help us save our park?" And I remembered at that point what I'm advocating for. I have to advocate also for the youth in our community. The youth have a decision on that park as well. And remember, it's federal dollars that is buying that park from our community, which is kind of an oxymoron because it's our money going to the feds to buy that park. So take your children to that park this week before you make that crucial decision, and I'll tell you about my plans for mayor at the end. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Now we will start with our first question, and after we finish our first question, I will correct what I said a little earlier about how we were going to do this. So, Paul, shoot away. Mr. Olson and Mr. Pero.
Okay. Mr. Olson, you have made the reform of the city's education system the centerpiece of your campaign. What have you done as a city councilor and as the council mayor to begin that process?
I have actively looking outside of the box, ladies and gentlemen. And I think we need to look outside of the box for solutions, because rolling out the same programs, the same budgets, and expecting different results is the basic definition of insanity. And I have suggested the Harlem Children's Zone as a model which has been highlighted on 60 Minutes, where they have had extraordinary success in an urban zone, starting with a city block and going to 100 blocks, and achieving extraordinary academic success. I think we should be looking at that model. Now, shortly after being elected mayor in December, I met with the superintendent and discussed this with him, and he indicated to me verbally over lunch that this was a program that he was familiar with and perhaps could be integrated here in the community. I've also brought this directly to the school board, and I have written, as your mayor, to Mr. Jeffrey Canada, who runs the program. Very proactive.
Thank you very much. Mr. Pero,
Well, I don't want to take all my time saying what Mr. Olson has done or not done. I believe when I was mayor, I was active in terms of bringing policy changes, having joint meetings with the Board of Ed to discuss what we could do together. Self-insurance. We self-insured the city and in terms of health insurance, and we saved over $1 million. And that savings, part of that savings went to the Board of Ed. Part of it went to the city. I would like to see us combine finance, accounting, and legal functions, which will save us close to $800,000. And I believe that some of those dollars can go filter back to the classroom. So I'm about giving savings to the Board of Ed. I'm also about believing that we have to have a change of how we do policy at the board. The board needs to be more active, and I believe as a legislator for the last 16 years developing good policy, I can help them as a voice on that board, as an ex officio member. I also believe we need to focus on pre-K. We have partnered with Waterford, but we need to look at existing pre-K programs and look to see if we can put additional slots in some of those as opposed to building a new building. I also believe we need to expand after-school programs. We have a 21st century program. I believe we need to expand that for magnet and charter schools and provide for transportation. So we're looking at homework and activities after school. And I also believe we need to bring the teachers back into the discussion. We've thrown them out of the discussion. We need to bring them back into the discussion. We need to get rid of the $1,000 a day consultants and work on making the system right again. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Olson?
The joint meetings under former Mayor Pirro with the Board of Education were contentious, counterproductive, and quite frankly, we didn't get much done. A lot of personal animosity seemed to be exhibited, and it was not what I would call a good use of time. Now, as your mayor, as I mentioned, I've addressed the school board, and I told them that I want to be an advocate for our schools and our students and academic achievement. And I have done just that, as recently as last week with the Kente Cultural Center's Rising Star program.
Thank you. Paul's second question will go to Mike and Lori.
Well, I think we're supposed to give the other candidates an
Oh, I'm
opportunity.
sorry, I didn't
if
see
they,
any hands. I didn't see any hands.
I'd like to rebut.
Would you like,
Yes.
okay.
The mayor and the superintendent of schools are two different departments, so it really is a special relationship that is somewhat dysfunctional in this city. Part of my four-year plan is to combine municipal services under one campus, and that would bring the superintendent of schools' offices into the same offices as the mayor. I think communication is key. Right now, we don't have communication. The second aspect of my office is to establish a 10-member panel, advisory panel, and one of those members will be a very talented person in the field of education.
Thank you, Lori. Are there others who have something to say on this point? Andy?
Well, I believe in education wholeheartedly. But unfortunately, the truth of the matter is we haven't done enough in our community. You keep hearing your elected officials say they're going to do a better job in education and a better job, and our students pay the price for it every year by having lower test scores. So as your new mayor, I will ask the City Council and the Board of Education to work with me exclusively to put down the law and make sure that the Board of Education lets the superintendent and the school system know that he works for them and not the other way around. We have to take a proactive stance. Our children are our future, and we have to take it seriously.
Thank you. We ready for the next question? This will be for Mike and for Lori.
Okay, Mr. Bassetto, what should be the city's response to youth violence? Should it be more police or more youth programs?
In one area, we did respond to youth violence, and we did it with a combination of better police-community relations as well as programming. But I think the key is not just programming, it's to support and enhance the programs that work. I believe we have to eliminate programs that do not. We cannot fund everything for everyone. The Safe City Commission was formed to address an increase in violence in a certain age group, and that Safe City Commission was formed and with a well-rounded group of citizens from all walks of life, a very diverse group. And I can tell you, some of the items mentioned in that particular group have been implemented. And one of them is jobs at the New London Public Library. One of the main reasons that kids get in trouble is because they don't have a job. And we have to find those opportunities for those young students and make sure that they're off the streets. And I have no time left, so I'll have to wait for my rebuttal. Sorry.
I agree with Mike that we need jobs, and part of my plan is to implement the international shops and increase tourism in the city to provide training and hospitality for our youth. I'm a neighborhood advocate. We have some serious problems in our neighborhood, and that's why you see some serious incidences in our middle school and our high school. It's not just test scores. It is there are a lot of problems that stem from the type of housing we have in New London. Over 63% non-owner occupied. This creates an instability in our neighborhoods, and we're seeing that in the youth violence. Our young people need a wonderful, nourishing nurturing rather environment to grow up in. Unfortunately, because of the transient population in the city, these youth are growing up next to drug dealers, sex offenders. There's 77 sex offenders in the city of New London, and they probably have paid their dues to society, but we're 5.5 square miles. We have serious, serious crime problems, and these aren't going to be fixed with Band-Aids. If you want our youth to be successful in life, we have to stabilize our neighborhoods. I am a mayor who will lead our city, neighborhood by neighborhood, into a stabilization plan, and we will have a safer city in the end.
For many of you who have not read my platform, safe, walkable neighborhoods is my overarching goal. When people come out of their homes, they should feel safe. When people enjoy the parks in our city, they should feel safe. But it leads back to education. Public safety, economic development, and education go hand in hand in improving our city's conditions. And I will tell you, early preschool, every student in New London should be afforded preschool. There should be a theory that we follow, fine by 9. Most of our students, by 9, their core traits are, I can't talk anymore, sorry. Thank you.
Are there, yes, Rob? No. You've had your 90,
Okay.
you had 90
Okay.
seconds, so Rob is calling for his first rebuttal.
Yes, I voted for additional police officers. The plan I put out in February, I think it's a combination to the question. I voted for additional police officers in this budget. I would expand it over the next 5 years. I believe it has to do with the home ownership program that I worked to do, put in place last year. And I also believe we got to focus in on the discussion that's happening right now with our community partners. The ability to have a community center that is centralized, as well as bringing all the other partners who are at the table right now. Within my first 6 months, I'd like to have that discussion ended and then look at an implementation that would have a senior center as well as a recreational
Thank you,
facility.
Rob. Marty has called for a rebuttal.
Again, folks, as your mayor, I'm already working with Councilor Passero, who is taking the lead on the community center project. And I'm excited about its prospects, and I think that we see a light at the end of the tunnel. And for those of us who've been in the community long enough to remember the YMCA, there's been a giant hole in our community to meet our youth's needs since the closing of the Y on Meridian Street. And I think that we are ready to move forward in a very positive way, and I'm pleased to be a part of that team.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? All righty. Our next pairing is Mr. Finizio and Mr. Lockwood. Paul?
Mr. Finizio, you've called for dissolving the New London Development Corporation. Will this require increased spending by the city for economic development? If not, who gets the job done with their dissolution?
I believe that the recent development plan at Fort Trumbull involving the Stillman property is an example of bad development for the city of New London. It is being trumpeted as a step forward, but I believe it is a step backward. We do not need more rental properties in the city of New London. We need owner-occupied housing. The size of the tax abatement and the land giveaway that's involved in this deal has signaled to me that NLDC's strong desire is to show a victory. After 10 years, after losses and investments approaching $100 million, they want to show, see, it wasn't all for nothing. I believe we can do better. I've advocated for a green integrated neighborhood at Fort Trumbull. I believe this would be more marketable, more affordable, and would provide for our long-term resource needs and create jobs. I believe that abolishing NLDC will be difficult, will involve the state and the city working in tandem, but it will be no more expensive than the expenses we have already borne for over a decade of failure at Fort Trumbull.
Thank you. Andy?
Thank you. Actually, Daryl and I are on a lot of those same points with NLDC. I had the opportunity to go out on their boat ride when they invited all the mayors and tried to convince me that us giving them tax abatements was a wise idea. Well, they're going to have about 99 units of rental units, which will bring you about $99,000 of taxes. Why, if they have them all rented, they'll get about $8.2 million. So I don't think that's a good idea for New London. A while back, they were going to have a whole hotel chain and a development done, and that fell through. So I think we're better off serving our own community by managing our own community. They're their own corporation. They're a 501c3, as you've heard numerous times through debates, and they can't just be closed down, but that doesn't mean we have to do business with them either. I think we're fully capable with smart people in this town to take our own land and develop it properly. Thank you.
Last week, I had an interesting conversation with Congressman Courtney, who told me that funding was being held up for the Coast Guard Museum by a congressman named James Oberstar, who didn't want to give money to the City of New London because of Kilo. There's a dark stain on our community. We need to signal, not just to ourselves, but to the entire nation, that we have turned a corner, that we, the people of the City of New London, are controlling our own development, and that we are moving forward in a way that is geared towards serving and protecting our own people, not large, out-of-state corporations.
The first to call for a rebuttal was Mr. Olson.
Ladies and gentlemen, 2 years ago when I ran for city council, Fort Trumbull was number 2 on my list to education. I'm for progress at Fort Trumbull. And what Mr. Finenzio is suggesting, and I'm surprised as an attorney that he would go in this direction, but to try to take the NLDC out, and they deserve much of the scorn. Believe me, they do. And I don't want to minimize that. But the time, effort, and expense to get them out is going to set us back another 10 years.
Thank you, Mr. Olson.
That's unacceptable.
Mr. Pero?
I agreed with Mr. Finizio's first statement on NLDC back in May when he said that it would be not the right direction to go to abolish them. And then in September, he said he wanted to abolish them. And then the Day did an editorial about the tax abatements at Fort Trumbull, and he said he didn't have a problem with them. But then in another debate, he said that that's why he came to the conclusion that NLDC had to go. He changed his position too many times to get votes in the community. You need a person who's either consistent on issues or is not. He's not consistent on issues. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? Lori? This is your second rebuttal, Lori.
I know.
Okay.
This is a really important one, though.
Okay.
The day of my fundraiser at the Kilo House, Darrell changed his opinion on NLDC. Darrell has been a Republican and a Democrat, and I don't really care what party you are. I'm unaffiliated. But I'll tell you, in 2007, I was before City Council saying that NLDC took our deeds illegally, and they're holding them illegally. My expertise in real estate development and business is critical to making the fort into a development that will be progressive and help New London. A bunch of green development sounds really great, and maybe it's something to work for, but in reality, it's not going to happen that way.
Thank you very
And
much.
we have other ideas that we could implement there.
Thank you very much. Darrell?
In the editorial, which I would ask you to check on the abatements, I said that abatements are a usable tool, but that I disagreed with this development project and I preferred a green development at Fort Trumbull. My position on the NLDC changed because of that development project. When new facts and new events intervene, you need to take them into account and be willing to change your position if you feel you're on the wrong course. Rob, I wish in 2004 or 2005 you had seen what a failure this was and had changed your mind too.
Is there anyone else? Please. Lori, could you turn your microphone a little more this way? I'm just wondering if that sound is feedback. I don't see our technician. All right. Anyone else? Our next question, Paul, will go to Marty Olson and Mike.
Mr. Olson, when a homeless man soiled the whale tail fountain last summer, you seemed to dismiss it as no big deal. You thought it was overblown. But some merchants I talked to saw the action as indicative of a serious vagrancy problem And I'm wondering, are you out of tune with those kind of concerns?
I'm hardly out of tune, folks. We have a committee that's working as we speak, and it's been getting no publicity. Is there anything we can do with this feedback? Because it's really disconcerting here.
Yeah.
And I really don't want to talk through this.
Just a minute. Timers, please stop. We'll start over on this one. Here's the man of the hour. He'll figure it out.
We think so, yeah.
Because of Laurie.
It's my fault.
Can you hear me? Thank you.
It's still doing it.
There's a committee, folks, that is working as we speak, initiated by Tom Curcio in the fire department. We have police presence, we have SCAD, L&M, and Peter Schulteis, our outreach worker, Kathy Zoll from the Homeless Hospitality Center, and collectively, they are working to address this very important issue and doing a very successful job. We have pinpointed a very small handful of people who are creating the bulk of the problems and getting them the help that they need. We're dealing with the most vulnerable people in our community, and to expect that they're just going to disappear is not going to happen. It really isn't. This collect them, ship them up, and ship them out philosophy doesn't work. The state of Connecticut, when they closed the facility in Norwich, kind of made that abundantly clear that that is not policy in the state of Connecticut, and it's certainly not going to work here. So we've got to work more proactively, and I'm an advocate as your mayor and as your future mayor to really work hard to get our surrounding communities to support what we're doing here with more financial support. Thank you.
Mike?
Can you clarify the whale tail incident? I have to say, this is one of the more disturbing incidents that took place in New London. And not necessarily what happened, but how people exposed it and I guess used propaganda for political gain. Bill Morse came to the city council, who's on the Board of Education, and publicly stated what happened. Evelyn Loziotis came and said the same thing on public record. Somehow, I was accused of blowing up the incident. I didn't understand that. The second item that took place was a New York Times journalist who came to visit me. And I said, how'd you hear my name? Well, your political opponents say, and then I knew. And that's where the whale tail became a major issue when it shouldn't have been. But the real core issue is that we had 700 homeless people visit New London in 2010. The even more pressing issue is that 72% of those people are not from New London. So if Mr. Olson wants to add to that total, I'm in disagreement with that. If somebody else wants to, I disagree. Our neighbors have a social responsibility to take care of their people as well. New London can no longer shoulder the responsibility for every social service in the area. It's affecting us in a negative way. I would not follow the state of Connecticut's policy of kicking people out into the street, as Mr. Olson referred to. Thank you.
Mr. Olson?
In regards to the whale tail specifically, our children are being denied the opportunity on a hot day from going underneath the fountain and cooling off. I think that's a travesty. And a little effort of civil disobedience, if you take a peek at my flyer out there, I've taken a walk underneath here and gotten wet myself to show folks that I think we're okay. Thank you.
Are there any others who want to respond? Mike, you've already had your rebuttal. Well,
We let Mr. Finizio use one of his rebuttals, so
would you like?
that seemed to be the
All right,
precedent.
go ahead.
Okay.
You had 90 seconds, so now you're using one of your rebuttals.
This is one of my rebuttals,
Yeah, exactly.
I have to say, I would never let your grandchildren or your children run under that fountain in the condition it was in. And that is why the state of Connecticut shut it down. And for Mr. Olson to say it was fine and dandy to run underneath it is irresponsible. It's not made for that. And that's why you can't use it for that. It was recycled water, but it was recycling dirty water, soiled water. It's my responsibility to stand up for you and the people of New London. You cannot condone that type of activity.
Daryl, did you want to add to that? Did you call for rebuttal? Did anyone? All right. Well then, our next pairing is Rob Harrow and Lori Hopkins Kavanaugh. Paul?
Is this working? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Perro, with the recent decision to grant the tax abatements to the Fort Trumbull developer, has the council now set a precedent that all future developers will expect to get tax breaks to build in Fort Trumbull?
No, I think that what I did, and I think many other councilors did, was to evaluate the proposal of the abatement. The abatement, to me, similar to the Harbor Towers, wasn't taken just at first submittal. It was broken down, and to me, I think that what you're getting in return is you're going to get taxes, tax revenue. You're going to get building improvements. You're also going to get $1,000 per unit in the construction phase. So what I looked at was the ability to do this under the City and Town Development Act, which you, the voters, had voted on at the previous election. It's in an enterprise zone. They would have had the ability to get abatements anyways. So I looked at what they proposed, similar to Harbor Towers. Harbor Towers, you had 3 separate locations at Harbor Towers, properties that were combined into one, now are making over $60,000 in taxes for the City of New London. To me, it's about the individual proposal.
Thank you. Lori?
Break this thing, yeah. We're really good at giving away stuff in New London, and I think that's we're working at in a situation where we need to market our positive assets and make people want to be here and want to develop here. And home ownership, I'm glad Daryl has listened to my platform for the past 3 months that I've been carrying my little chart around about, we're 63% non-owner occupied. But really, property owners, when they have a beautiful location overlooking the waterfront, the Groton Historic Bank, our gorgeous historic downtown, they'll pay the taxes. You just have to give them what they want. And nobody has had any vision to really provide the things that we need and what people will demand. I owned an advertising and PR firm for 20 years and represented over 600 companies that hired me to give them advice on how to succeed. And I can tell you, Fort Trumbull Peninsula is a cakewalk for me in terms of marketing. But we haven't provided the 1 or 2 or 3 concepts that people will demand. Another apartment complex is the most unimaginative, the worst concept, and obviously they have to give it away for someone to actually build it.
Mr. Perro?
Again, I evaluate each proposal on its merits. We're getting tax revenue. The city needs tax revenue. You need to build disposable income in this community if you want to have a future in terms of your ability to compete with our neighbors. If you want to have additional recreational programs, if we want to talk about improvements to our school system, or if we want to keep our community affordable, you're going to have to grow the grand list. And I was supportive of that. Now, there are people up here who will benefit if I don't get elected as mayor, but I took the right vote because it's going to add revenue to this city, which we need, and disposable income. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any rebuttals? Andy?
Well, studying law for the last 5 years, back a little bit ago, precedent is set when something keeps repeating itself. We've seen it with the Harbor Towers. They've done a good job there, but they've forced themselves now to buy your house, give you oil, free taxes for a long time. I recall at a city council meeting when the Stillmans came in and said, we don't need tax abatements. But you know what? If they think they can get them, anybody comes here is going to ask for them. So we have to draw the line and stop it before it continues. We're just going to keep giving away tax dollars. We are going to get $99,000 a year when we should be getting 4 times that. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Just to let you know, everyone has used their first rebuttal. Second rebuttal has been used by Olson, Pero, Hopkins, Kavanaugh, and Lockwood. Okay? And our next pairing is Andy Lockwood and Marty Olson. Andy the first.
This question is to Mr. Lockwood, correct? Is that the...
Yes.
Yes. Speaking of tax, Mr. Lockwood, we checked with the tax collector's office, and we were told you owe about $37,500 in delinquent personal and business taxes. And we just wonder, how could you as mayor impose taxes on other citizens when you still have these outstanding taxes yourself?
Well, I'm glad you brought that up. I know you can laugh, but I'm glad you brought it up. This year, thankful to an honest tax assessor who told me that my residence that I took over 10 years ago was still a 10-room rooming house instead of my house, and I could have made about $1 million during that time, I was very upset. I even took it to Mr. Olson and told him, let's sit down, get this worked out. But you know what? He kept ducking it under the table because I had to file a lawsuit about it. But the truth of the matter is, if the day looked into it, they would know $30,000 of that is taxes on used car taxes for a used car dealership, which are non-taxable in Connecticut. The state of Connecticut contacted the city, and they blew it off. So I will stick up for myself, and I will fight that matter. It's been evident in court, and I've had myself, my lawyer, another lawyer, keep going to Attorney Londrigan, and they keep blowing it off. So if I don't fight for my rights, how can I fight for your rights? Many people in this community are being overtaxed that are being pushed under the barrel because they don't have an attorney.
Mr. Olson?
All my taxes and water and sewer bills are paid and complete to date.
Thank you. Andy, you have 30 seconds.
Congratulations. Unfortunately, that's a good minute and a half. I wish he would have just admitted the fact that he does know about this situation, because I brought it to his attention, as you should, to your mayor. It shouldn't be brushed under the carpet like it is here all the time. Okay? Unfortunately, I'm in the tourist business, in the contracting business, and for all you know, I don't see much tourism coming to London. But if I'm elected mayor, there sure will be.
All right. Our next pairing is Mike and Daryl. So the first question goes to Mike. Paul?
I just want to make sure there were no more
I didn't
rebuttals on
see
that
any
one.
hands for
Oh,
the
okay.
rebuttals there. Maybe we should poll
So it's
everybody.
Mr. Bassetto. Mr. Bassetto, the City Council has hired a former Superior Court judge to investigate Police Chief Ackley's allegations that you interfered in her department. Kind of a two-part question. If elected mayor, would you make the results of that investigation public, regardless of the results? And two, if you had to hire a new police chief, what qualities are you looking for?
For many of you who do not know, an ethics complaint was filed against me for not recusing myself at a city council meeting. And I will fight that all the way. It's frivolous, it's vindictive, in a timely fashion. I will say this about the entire situation. For those of you who don't know, I waived my right of confidentiality so that everybody in this room, including Southeastern Connecticut, could actually view the proceedings in a public format. And they start tomorrow evening, and it will be televised in council chambers. And I encourage you to watch. I encourage you to see the truth. I encourage you to ask questions. Show up. You'll see the real deal. As far as a quality in the police chief, we all must understand this secret negotiation was initiated by the chief. This was her exit strategy, not mine.
Daryl?
The question asked did not concern the ethics complaints or those hearings. The question concerned the fact that a retired judge has been hired to investigate the possibility that Councilor Bracetto has improperly exerted influence over the police department, which is a very serious charge. He has every right, as every accused person does, to defend himself, and we all should withhold final judgment on this matter until results are released. But the charges made are serious. The qualities you asked for in a new police chief, well, I'll tell you right off the bat. If I get elected, one of the first things I will do is ask Police Chief Margaret Ackley to stay on the job. If she decides not to, or if at any point during my term as mayor, the police chief should leave, I would advocate for a merit-based, non-political national search to ensure that the policies that we need in New London are continued and strengthened to make sure that we have the best public safety apparatus possible, that our streets are safe, and that all of us have confidence in the operation and the leadership of our police department.
Mike?
As far as the chief, one thing that I will not stand for as your mayor, and I believe you would want me to stand up for you like I always have, is the self-authorized $200,000 in overtime. Unacceptable. $100,000 per year over the past 2 years. A pretty decent pay. I will not advocate that someone has health care benefits until they're 65 years old, and we pay half the cost. I will not advocate for a secret deal that gives a benefit of an $11,000 per year increase in a pension for life. You will all be paying for that. I will not advocate that in the next police chief.
Are there others? Please. Do any of the other panel members wish to have a rebuttal or add anything? All right, then we'll move to the next question, Paul. This one is for Mr. Lockwood and Mr. Perro. Mr. Lockwood first.
Mr. Lockwood, if voters disagree with your opinion and approve the sale of half of Riverside Park to the Coast Guard Academy, what actions would you then take as mayor?
Well, if the voters do approve the sale, I'm fully believe in the voting process situation. However, I think we should be aware of the fact that if that sale is approved, there will be lawsuits filed by the PAC that's already involved in saving that park. I think they believe there's integrity issues there that have to be developed. I guess I would just add there that the citizens in London took a vote of almost 400 people signing a petition not to sell the park. So if it changes by overwhelming majority, we'd have to support that. But I will say that I think we have to be cautious that there will be lawsuits filed to block that sale from taking place and closing on time as required.
Rob?
Well, when I became mayor last year, the Coast Guard approached us about possibly taking over Riverside Park. Previously, 2 times in my history, the city council gave away Riverside Park. I believed it was important to have a discussion about Riverside Park. We'd had a discussion about 6 months. I believed that we shouldn't give the whole park away, that we shouldn't provide 13 acres either. I believe a happy medium, 9 and 9, I thought was the way to go, because I believe it's important to have the Coast Guard in our community. They do a lot, but also to have a simulator center where you can have over 7,000 individuals come and train on simulator scans and eat in our restaurants and be in our hotels and be in our community. But I believe also our approach to the park, we had no approach. Moving forward, depending upon whatever way it goes, yes or no, I do plan on working, if it's a no vote, with the people in and around the neighborhoods to work on what activities we will have there to not have this happen again. But I voted for action. Many of the people who said no have never thought about, on the council, Mr. Olson, never brought up the issue of Riverside Park before. It was never on the agenda. So I was for bringing something to the forefront and having discussion. And for having this issue about it being part of the mayoral debate, you have the right to vote. We put it to you, the voters. I wouldn't just vote on one issue alone, because you're going to have to live with somebody for 4 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Andy, you have 30 seconds.
Okay, I guess I would comment on a couple of the things that happened during the sale process of Riverside Park. First of all, when the petition was circularized. The council had the right, when that petition came back, with overwhelming support, not to sell the park, that they could have just stopped it right then and there. Now, they have put it out to the voters, and Mr. Perro has finally said his position that he is in favor of selling the park. But I will tell you this, from day one, even when I was running for state rep, I listened to the people in that community, in that neighborhood, and they wanted to keep the park, and that's why I still support it. Thank you.
Mr. Olson is called for rebuttal.
Ladies and gentlemen, I feel strongly that the community is going to be overwhelmingly supporting to save our park. And I'm committed, as your strong mayor, to allocate funds. We've recently approved a bond authorization note, and we've got about $8 million that have not been allocated yet to target, to purchase and install a playscape at Riverside Park, at least one, perhaps two, like Bates Woods, as well as a new pavilion, new grills, new picnic tables, and we'll take care of the park, and the use will be significant. Thank you.
Are there any others? Yes, Mike?
I think we can put a playscape, picnic tables, and grills on 9 acres. I truly believe that you have to look at who you're dealing with, the United States Coast Guard. The United States Coast Guard is a partner in our community. This is an agreement that can benefit both. With almost $3 million, when you vote yes for the sale, you are voting yes to revitalize Riverside Park.
Anyone else? We'll move on to the next pair, and that would be Lori and Marty. And Lori is first.
In your leadership plan, you call for zoning changes to prohibit any new apartment complexes in the city. I was wondering the reason for that strategy, and is it a mistake to limit potential development opportunities in that manner?
New London once was filled with neighborhoods where people owned their homes. Our multifamily housing stock is about 4,000 2 to 4 family homes in the city. It used to be owned by a family or different relations within a family. A grandmother and the sisters and uncles would all live in one house, and it stabilized these neighborhoods. Now it's become a business for outside landlords, and that's where we're getting our drugs, and that's where we're getting our crime. And these houses are turn-of-the-century properties that need lead abatement. I was in one on Rosemary Street yesterday, right next to Riverside Park. Vote no, Riverside Park. We need oxygen in that neighborhood. We need to reconnect it to downtown. We have built a city of apartment complexes. What a great thing. Now, I don't know about you, but I was born here in 1960, and I remember all the families that I grew up with. You're not going to get that from apartment complexes.
Thanks, Lori. You get 30 seconds after your opponent. It's Marty. I'm sorry.
I'm Mike, you're Marty.
And I'm Marty. Thank you.
M&M.
Folks, we are in an extraordinarily competitive environment here. And people have choices on where they're going to live, where they're going to invest, where they're going to work, where they're going to open up new businesses. And we have to compete. And the primary issue that's going to be a draw to our community is our schools. And as long as our schools are scraping the bottom, it makes it extraordinarily difficult, no matter what else we're doing, to accomplish that goal. We have to address that first and foremost. A good school system is like a magnet. People want to come to the community with a good school. And I'm confident that as a community, we can get over the top on this and move in the right direction. Thank you.
Lori?
I'm not real popular with outside investors these days. I got a call from one today and said, you know, I don't like you beating up on us. That's my business, is to really work with investors, but I feel so strongly that we need to secure our 4,000 multifamilies and take advantage of the different lending programs, grant programs, and financing programs that are available, that our working poor can actually be homeowners for less than they're going to pay rent to these absentee landlords. A homeowner is a watchdog in the neighborhood. They don't let anybody get away with anything. But when you have a neighborhood with rental housing in it, it unfortunately takes a couple of bad apples and then it destabilizes that neighborhood. And that's why New London has gone downhill over the past 50 years. It all has to do with the rental housing market. I don't want any more rental houses in New London. It is really, every one of them is, I don't care how fancy they are, I don't care how pretty they are, I don't care where they're located. This is about stabilizing our neighborhoods, and this is the single most important solution to our crime and to our schools. If you look at Habitat for Humanity's statistics, they will tell you that homeowners, kids from homeowners, residential properties are more likely to graduate from college. They're less likely to get into trouble because they have people watching over them. These aren't good neighborhoods in some areas, and it shouldn't be that way because we have great neighborhoods.
Thank you. Is there anyone who would like to respond? Rob?
The plan of development of London calls for more owner occupancy. Myself and Councilor Spracazzi wrote a plan last year, new home in New London. Over 20 new homeowners in our city looking at New London and are occupying neighborhoods. I did something about it. I wrote a program, found funding. My first 2 years as mayor, I said I would continue this program. So over the next 3 years, hopefully you'll have over 60 new homeowners in the city who are looking out for other neighbors, as well as aesthetically improving their neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Just to let you know, Rob and Marty, you're out of rebuttals. Our next pairing is Darrell and Rob, with Darrell being first. Paul?
Mr. Finezio, you have stated that you have a long-term vision for city revitalization, and one that you said that could take as many as 10 to 20 years to fully realize. And your opponents will try to make an issue of your frequent moving and your political party changes. So why should voters expect that you'll have, the staying power, given that record, to achieve that long-term vision?
In order to get experience, like an MPA from New York University, you have to go to New York. NYU doesn't come to Westerly or to New London. In order to get a law degree, you have to go off to law school. Law school doesn't come to you. As a single man in my 20s, I moved around, got good experience, got good education and training. And now, as a married man in my 30s in my permanent home, I believe that I am ready to go to work for the people of the city of New London. As to the party changes, most of those that are mentioned were made between the age of 18 and 23 in the state of Rhode Island, where state law allows you to switch back and forth to vote in different primaries, which I did, because I was not born to a political family, I was not born into a political party. Throughout my career in public service, I have been a consistent progressive, and both the Democratic president of the town council I served on and the Republican vice president are supporting my current campaign. And I believe that speaks volumes about the quality of my time in public service.
Thank you very much. Rob?
Well, I believe when you moved to Waterford, you were an unaffiliated voter, but I just believe you're untried, you're untested, and from what I've seen, you're a little unpredictable. In terms of how you've managed your finances of your campaign, your reporting, very sloppy. All of the candidates, we've learned this from the Rowland administration, new campaign finance laws. They were put there for a reason, that everybody reports their information accurately. And I believe from what I saw, I would not want you managing the finances of the city. I think it's important that we have somebody who has the experience and knowledge, who's been the chairman of the finance committee for 10 of 16 years, to be leading this city into the future when we have a finance director right now who's only been there for 4 months. We need somebody who's going to take over from day one, who understands the $80 million budget that we have. I think it's important that when you look at Mr. Finizio's position on land value tax, he wants the pilot program. We looked at it last year. I believe it's a tax increase on many people. He disagrees with me. But if you go down to the assessor's office, and I ask that you do, you'll see that many people's property taxes do go up because they're penalized for not building out to lot size. So I have some disagreements with Mr. Finizio as his approaches to government and the ability in which he takes his campaign and how he would govern this city. Thank you.
Thank you. Darrell?
Mr. Perro is trying to make a huge issue out of harmless clerical errors on my financial statements made by an amateur volunteer campaign treasurer working in a grassroots effort. All of the donations received by my campaign have been disclosed, as have all the expenses. And unlike any other candidate in this race, I do not take any money from New London public employees as a matter of policy. I will not appoint anyone to public office who has donated over $100. I will not run a pay-to-play city. You can be assured of it.
Thank you. Does anyone want to use a rebuttal? Would you like to use? All right.
Mr. Perro says that I am unpredictable. He is very predictable. He asks us to look at his time on the council and his time as mayor to elect him to this new office. His greatest achievement on the time on the council was the Fort Trumbull disaster in eminent domain. His greatest achievement as ceremonial mayor was the proposed sale of Riverside Park. We know what a Rob Perro mayoralty would look like, and that is why I have reached the decision that it is time for new leadership for New London.
Are there other rebuttals? Please, please. All right, our next pairing is Andy and Lori, and Andy gets the first question.
Mr. Lockwood, people who work with the city's young people have told today about their desire to have a youth center where they could safely congregate and stay active. Would you support the creation of such a center if elected mayor?
I think a lot of the problems with our youth stem with the problem that they don't have much to do after school or places to go. Last year when I was running for state rep, I took a survey asking people why you would come to New London, and I asked a lot of children, what do you do in New London after school to have fun? You know, maybe some of them hang out in the park and play basketball. I can assure you a lot of them are at home doing Nintendo or something that's not productive to them. So if they had a youth center where they could go to, and I talked to the seniors last year that maybe they could volunteer there to help them in their educational endeavors, where they could actually tutor them and interact together, that would be a big help for the city. They'd have some free time away from home, and they'd also get a benefit by learning some things from very wise seniors that we have in our town.
All right, Lori?
My plan calls for a new municipal campus, which is to cut waste out of our government by about 50% and bring all of our fractioned municipal departments into one campus to save money. 50% of our budget goes to education right now. We have a lot of problems. Our police station, the stairs are falling off the back of the building. I would like to build a new police station and make that into a visitor center. I have a 4-year plan. It's a solid plan. I would follow it. So if you could get a copy of it, they're available here. You can see where I would spend my money. Unfortunately, a community center is not what I would do in the first 4 years as mayor.
Thank you. Andy?
Well, that's what I love about politicians. They never answer the question. They taught us in law school to answer the question. So the question is about a youth center, okay? And the way to find out what the youth need is to actually go talk to them. I am proud that our youth is here tonight. They don't have to be here. They don't even get a chance to vote, but they get to hear the opinions of the new leaders of this town. I would gladly take the opportunity to sit with them and find out things that they'd like to do to not only contribute to our community, but stuff that we can do for them so we all work together. Thank you.
Mike has asked for a rebuttal.
To understand the youth, you have to know the youth. And furthermore, you have to support the youth. Not just now when you're running for mayor, through the decades that you've been in New London. Recently, and I am so proud of this achievement. I've been recognized as the Martin Luther King Leadership Award from the state of Connecticut. And their focus and the reason they chose me was my activity, long history with the youth in New London. And as your mayor, the youth will always have a voice. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone who wants to make a comment? All right, our next pairing, Paul, is Rob and Mike, and Rob goes first.
Yeah, Mr. Perro, one of the centerpieces of your campaign has been a promise not to raise any property tax for at least the first 2 years. Are you going to build in any contingency if something unexpected happens, big cuts in municipal aid, the loss of a large taxpayer, or is this an ironclad assurance?
Well, I'm glad you brought it up. I said I would do it 2 years ago, and we did it. We reduced taxes last year. We didn't increase them this year. We've been able to negotiate contracts through the administrative process, which don't see large increases in union wages. I believe I have an understanding to reduce the expenditure side $2 million. Health and wellness program, also a $200 copay on emergency room visits. Our debt is reduced by about $500,000 and a structured early retirement program. My commitment to keeping New London affordable is one of the centerpieces of drawing people here, allowing businesses to grow. This year, we didn't spend all the money that we got from sales tax revenue. The state of Connecticut finally gave us a piece. So my hope is that over the next 4 years, we will build in that money for a reinvestment in the downtown. If something falls apart, that money is available for the contingency plan. And I believe there are other ways of doing it through the expenditure
Thank
side
you,
as
Rob.
well.
You get 30 seconds after Mike.
Councilor Perro alluded to himself and Councilor Spicacci as having many initiatives and taking credit for the taxes and where they are today. But I must tell you, we did it together. Because as you know, in New London, it takes 4 votes to do anything. And I want to say that I'm proud over the past 4 years to introduce a program with my colleagues and actually see it through and saved you $3 million. It's called Program Review. And what you do, you review every program in the city of New London. You eliminate waste and enhance programs that are working. I will continue to do that as your mayor. As a businessman, I know what it takes to meet a payroll. I understand how to have money in a rainy day account in the event that something goes wrong. You can't just live for today. You have to live and have the funds ready for tomorrow. This city is not loaded with a treasure chest of cash. And I do understand that we have police issues, staffing issues. I do understand we have a fire department that is extremely busy. We have over 20 parks that have needs. You want your sidewalks fixed. In order to do that, you have to have value for your dollar, and I will give you that as your mayor. I understand about promises, and I have to say, I think one of the reasons you voted to switch to an empowered mayor form of government is that many politicians over the years have truthfully overpromised and underperformed. That is something I will not do.
Mr. Perro?
Well, I met the promise 2 years ago. I said I wouldn't increase your taxes, and I didn't. It's important to me. I understand the budget. 10 years of my 16 years, I've been fighting to keep New London efficient. And we brought in self-insurance. We brought in a risk manager last year to look at all the issues with workers' comp. We reduced our workers' comp by $750,000. We weren't even going to the workers' comp hearings. We have better practices within all of our work areas because we've established a safety committee. You don't have a current finance director who's been here a long time, 4 months. You want somebody who understands this budget. I understand it better than anybody.
Rob.
Thank you.
Does anyone wish to have another 30 seconds? Mr. Lockwood?
Well, I don't know about you folks, but Hartford scares me when they make promises that they're not going to cut aid to municipalities. So part of that 2-year promise is Governor Dan Malloy has said that he will not cut municipal aid in the next 2 years. But I think we have to be proactive in New London and find a way to make ourselves sustainable. Bring in business, add to the grand list, bring in money producing items that gives us a rainy day fund, so if he cuts that promise, we don't have to worry about it and we can move forward with ease and not nervousness. Thank you.
Thank you. The next pairing is Daryl and Marty, and the first question goes to Daryl.
And Mr. Finizio, what would be your role as mayor in working to improve student performance in New London City Schools?
As mayor of the City of New London, whoever is elected will sit as a non-voting ex officio member of the board. So all of us need to be honest that our main priorities will be ones of advocacy, to ensure that new programs are instituted properly, to ensure that innovations are embraced, and to ensure that our budget is efficient. I believe that what the mayor can do directly, first and foremost, is that we need to make this building that we're sitting in tonight ADA compliant. If we don't, we could lose millions of dollars in federal aid. That will take a bond, and it will be the primary responsibility of the mayor to ensure that that bond gets passed. In terms of student performance, other than facilities, which the mayor has a direct role in, I would suggest that we need to look at mentoring programs, not just for students, but for parents. We need to get parents involved more in the education system. And to do that, you need community leadership, not just government leadership. Half the job of mayor is done in City Hall, and the other half is done in our schools and in our neighborhoods. And that is where I feel I could have a strong impact.
Thank you. Mr. Olson?
The role of the mayor is going to be very prominent in education, and it should be. The ex officio seat on the school board is a very, very important and cannot be understated one iota. And it's one that I look forward to serving, and I relish that opportunity. Michael Bloomberg, the mayor of New York City, has done extraordinary things in New York in that same role in a significantly larger school district. I think that the mayor is going to be one who's going to be moving public opinion and helping to shape public policy through this ex officio seat. Regarding mentoring, I'd just like to point out that I do mentor at our middle school and have for years. Not only do I walk the walk, but I talk the talk. Thank you.
Mr. Finizio?
Yes, I would just like to add that we also need to look at student performance differently. We have too heavy an emphasis on test score results, especially when we throw in students who are ESL students or students who are new to our district, and then we compare our district to others that are very different socioeconomic districts. We need to judge student performance by the improvement of each individual student. And we need to evaluate teachers on how students achieve individually, not merely based on test scores. We need to get away from blanket test scoring as a means of evaluation.
Thank you. The next pairing will be Mike and Andy, and Mike will be first.
Ms. Picetto, how would you, as mayor, work to expand the city's tax base?
In my private capacity as a developer, I have done it already. Project management is something that I have an extensive amount of experience in, and when you're a developer coming into New London, it would be nice for them to speak with somebody as the mayor who has experience and understands what they're going through and what their wishes are. At the same time, what their wishes are need to coincide with what the community would like to see. Any development that takes place is going to have to be something that we're all proud of and that we can get behind in the advocacy role. Expanding the tax base has a lot to do with public safety. You have to make sure that you are safe before anything takes place. After that takes place, what are the niches? What are some of the things that New London is missing? And you fill those. Harbor School is a perfect example of what I would do. Harbor School is closing very shortly. It's on the radar screen for me. We cannot afford to wait until it closes and then look for development. I'll be looking for it now.
All right. Andy?
Well, actually, I've been out already doing that. 2 weeks ago, I went to Myrtle Beach. I talked to Wyndham Resorts Hotel about opening here a hotel convention center with also timeshares involved in that. They've done it in the local communities, even as close to us as Newport, Rhode Island. It brings in a huge tax base and creates sustainable jobs. I've also talked to various grocery companies in the area. To have a downtown commuter community that won't have cars, we need support for them, like a grocery store where they can shop in. I've talked to outlet stores about bringing various outlet stores to fill up some of the downtown stores so we can get more taxes out of them. So rather than just walking the walk, I've been out there before becoming mayor, and even if I'm not elected, we'll continue to bring things to development here to expand our grand list. Thank you.
Mike?
We've talked about Fort Trumbull, or Fort Stumble, whatever you call it. We have the Lighthouse Inn. It needs to be fixed. It needs to be developed. We have Harbor School. It's closing. It's going to need to be developed. Edgerton School and the developer of that property owes everyone in this room an apology. The city officials involved owe everyone an apology. There's people sleeping in there. There's graffiti. It's boarded up. That's the same thing that could happen to Harbor School. As your mayor, I will not let that happen. I think ahead. And New London so many times, Capitol Theater, I could go on and on and on. As your mayor, I will advocate for these incremental improvements to the city, and as people see progress happening, developers will know that the city's invested in itself, and there's a great partner to deal with.
Does anyone, do either of two people have a rebuttal they'd like to offer? All right. This is our last pairing, and we will follow this with the 90-second closing statements. I don't know about you, but I think that this is a system that works very nicely. I'm pleased that people get a chance to talk to each other, and it's not just whisper down the lane when you have so many people answering the same question. I do thank you all for the job that you're doing. And so the last question goes to Lori and Darrell, and Lori is the first person.
Yes, can you explain your strong opposition to a pilot land value tax program, and how would you encourage the development of vacant space in the downtown?
Thank you, Paul, because I was really wanted to write 600 words in the day and tell you all about how I felt about land value tax. There's not a single business, industry, association, probably in the United States, that supports land value tax. Mr. Finizio has never paid tax. He's never bought a piece of property. He's never had a private sector job. He's never really done much of anything in his career, unfortunately.
Please don't be rude. Thank you.
This is very important. You have to have experience. To walk the walk, you need to know what you're talking about. And when it comes to taxation, our system isn't broken. Our system is unfair. It's supposed to be a scientific approach to evaluations, and it's not being done that way. If I were mayor, I would fix it. The assessor's office is one of my main criteria to have that operating fairly for everybody in New London.
Thank you, Lori. You get 30 seconds after this. Darrell?
I love you, Lori. I have worked in the private sector. I've worked multiple jobs at multiple times since I was 14 years old. I grew up in a family-owned small business. I've run my own legal practice for 6 years. I worked for the city council in New York for over 2 years. I worked in a bookstore. I worked as a morning cook, putting myself through school. I've worked hard all my life. And I have paid taxes. I have owned real estate in Waterford. Did I put my house in my partner's name because I have a high liability profession and we're married and that's how we order our personal finances? Yes, like so many other small business owners. But let's talk about LVT. LVT does work. I believe that there are numerous examples that LVT has been a great success in revitalizing downtowns. No program, whether it's an abatement, a grant, a credit, or an alternative assessment program like LVT is going to be perfect. But we have to try something different. We've been trying the same things in downtown New London for decades, and they haven't worked. When you combine the investment necessary to fix up those buildings with the new assessments that they're going to face, it is market prohibitive for developers to invest. We need to remove the disincentive of an increased tax assessment and encourage redevelopment in our downtown. Until we do that, we cannot have a prosperous downtown, and we cannot have a growing tax base. We cannot have a prosperous city. It's time to innovate, and I believe that this is an acceptable, reasonable alternative to the current means that we have already tried and that have already failed.
Lori?
Land value tax is eminent domain by levy. It is unfair, it's immoral, it's unjust. I am opposed to it on every level. If it was so great for business, the business industries would support it, but they don't. Mr. Finizio wants his solution to downtown empty storefronts is to put social service providers in them. We can't do that. He does not have a business plan for downtown. We need to have a plan to bring businesses into the city. I'm the only person who has run a business, started a business in the city of New London, and I've started 2 businesses in the city of New London.
Now, let me tell you that each of you has 30 seconds left for your rebuttal, so you can do this one more time. Darrell?
I don't know where I've ever advocated that we should have social services in the front storefronts of downtown. But anyway, I want to use my last rebuttal time that I have tonight because I saved it just in case. But I want to use this time to say that as important as this mayor's race is, Riverside Park is equally, if not more important. We're electing a mayor for 4 years. Riverside Park, if it's gone forever. Please, please, this is a very bad deal and a poor planning decision for the city of New London. Please vote no on the sale of Riverside Park.
And Lori, would you like to use your last 30 seconds?
Yes, please.
Thank you.
Riverside Park, I have a plan. I'm the only person who presented an alternative to the sale of the park. I met with the Coast Guard Academy. I met with New London Housing Authority, and I pulled over 30 deeds and found the acreage where the Coast Guard Academy can go. If you want to know where Darrell said that he wants to put social services in the storefronts downtown, go to the last debate, New London Landmarks. It's on tape. NLDC, I came out very early and said we need to dissolve our relationship with NLDC. Darrell Finizio started with he was going to support it, and it took him 9 months to change his mind.
You have had your last word, and the final words will come beginning with Andrew Lockwood at the far end of the table. 90 seconds.
Okay, I have to do this DJ style because I got 2 minutes, so I got to get in quick. Okay, well, first of all, I've been accused of not having a plan. You're right, I don't have one. Lori accused me of it a couple weeks ago. This is your plan. For 4 years, you've told me your issues in New London, so I wrote your plan. It's not mine. Larry Hempel helped with bringing the shit that we've been talking about bringing here because it'll bring $897,000 to our community. But quickly, I want to go over some numbers tonight because I like to be a number man. So I'll try to get through them quick. 7-0, all 7 candidates that are on the council this year voted for those tax abatements in Fort Trumbull. 7-0 to keep NLDC alive in your city. 4-3 vote to sell Riverside Park. 4 is the number you need on this council to pass anything, so it's not done by 1. 4 is what you need to be ceremonial mayor. 2 is the number of petitions we sent out this year. 1 for Riverside Park, 1 to stop the tax abatements, which they didn't listen to the second one. So 0 is for the many times they've listened. 0 is also the amount of money I've asked the citizens in New London to put into my campaign. I've funded it completely myself and haven't asked for a dime because our community is hurting for jobs and things, and I don't think it's fair if you're going to pay me to get in office. So, real quick, the definition of a politician to me is telling you anything you want to hear to get me elected. If you want that, choose away, because I don't do that. I will not lie to your face, I won't tell you something that's not factual, and I'll keep you informed of what's going on. As your mayor, I will take the heat on these shoulders for ever failing that happens in the next 4 years. Every time we succeed, which will be numerous, it'll be your credit given to you. Our children are our future, and it's about time we start doing something for them.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lockwood. You did a pretty good job of keeping it in there, almost. Mr. Finizio.
Shortly after I declared my candidacy for mayor, I went on the Renshaw Report with Murray Renshaw. Did our interview, and when it was over, Murray said, "Do you really know what you've gotten yourself into? Do you know how nasty they can be down in New London?" And I told him exactly what I'm going to tell you. Yes, I do know how rough it can be. I know how rough politics can be. And there aren't a lot of people who are willing to expose themselves and their families to all the attacks that can come in the course of a political campaign. But I came forward and I ran against very long odds. I stuck it out through a very tough primary, and I've stuck it out all the way to tonight and through November 8th, because I believe that New London needs an alternative. We need a choice. We need a choice for real, new, positive, progressive leadership for our city. The leadership that can help us innovate, help institute new ideas, help bring new people into the process, and re-energize our community and rebuild our city. I believe that I have articulated throughout the course of this campaign a meaningful and reasonable way to do that. Come next Tuesday, November 8th, with your help and support and your vote, I truly believe that after generations of people looking for it, at long last, change really is coming to New London. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Hopkins Kavanaugh.
I am not a politician, I'm a businesswoman. Again, 600 companies hired me to advise them on how to become successful. And I've started 2 very successful large regional companies in the city of New London from scratch. I was not born with a silver spoon in my mouth. I was born in a 3-family house to hard-working blue-collar workers. I have been here since 1960, and I know why we have failed as a community in terms of our schools, in terms of our crime. I have the expertise in real estate, in business, in marketing, to be able to bring the solutions, not Band-Aids. I am not a career politician. I will not leave the office. I have no desires to go to a higher level in politics. I'm heavily vested in this community. I love this community. I had to do this. This was my calling and my purpose. If you do vote for me, I will not fail you. I am a strong leader. I have started companies, hired employees, created substantive things in our community. And I believe I bring to the table a set of tools and solutions that are going to make New London successful in the future. We can't bet on an unknown. And unfortunately, Mr. Finizio is a fine-looking man, and he's educated. However, he
Thank
doesn't
you.
have the background to make it happen.
Thank you for the compliments. Mike.
Over the next 4 years, I believe you're looking for results and not rhetoric. Over the next 4 years, you want someone who has the leadership ability to move this city forward. As someone who's been acknowledged as a leader throughout southeastern Connecticut and now Connecticut, I hope you consider me as an option. As a 2009 Community Revitalization Leader of the Year from the Chamber of Commerce, as well as the 2012 Martin Luther King Leadership Award from the state of Connecticut, they have recognized a leader in your community, in our community. And I will take those leadership skills and put them into action in the city. I disagree with candidate Finizio. This is not a nasty city. This is a great city. This is a city with great pride. And some of the nastiness came from the new person in our city. At this stage, at a previous debate, he said, "We don't want a dictator." And he was referring to me. His life partner made derogatory remarks on his personal page, as well as his treasurer of his campaign. That is not new, and that is not leadership. That is distasteful, and I discourage that from happening in the future with 1 week left. This is not a long shot campaign. As the many campaign volunteers are here, hundreds, if not thousands, believe that I'm the best shot for New London to move forward from the city of potential to the
Thank
city
you,
of
Mr. Pacetto.
prosperity. Thank you
very
so much.
Please. I have to say, your candidate loses time when you clap because the timers have their clocks running. So it's best not to. So, Mr. Perro.
Thank you. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to speak tonight. I believe it's not just about the issues, it's about the 6 people who sit before you. The ability to understand who can lead and who's ready to lead. On day 1, I will be ready to lead. the importance of our budget and our finances. When you are elected on election night, we have a department head who is temporary in terms of the finance department. That is a key position in this city. We just bonded $15 million. You need somebody who's going to be ready by December to submit a budget to the city council. That person is me. I'm ready and willing and able to submit a budget that does not provide a tax increase, that looks at our infrastructure and provides for an understanding that we need improvement, but we need to do it in an efficient way. And over the last 4 years, we have made improvements to parks and infrastructure. We've done it in an efficient way and not overtaxing you. I have the leadership and experience and the knowledge of the daily workings of this city that no other candidate has. And I take it on the sleeve, just as Councilor Brisetto says. I love this city. I think this city's a great city. All you people coming out tonight and in the future, you need somebody who's going to bring this community together. And I can do that from the city council to the Board of Ed. Because on election night, I fear that there's not going to be a majority, and you need somebody to lead on day one and bring the city together.
Thank you, Mr. Pirro.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Olson?
Thank you. Thank you all for coming out this evening. This crowd speaks volumes about the interest in our community. And I'm just heartwarmed by the enthusiasm that each and every one of you has for our community and for the different candidates that you're supporting up here. And I'd like to point out that after next week, that we all still have to live together. So let's have a civil community here. This is important. We can't take this November 9th and bring out this campaign forward. Now, this is our fifth opportunity to address the public as a group. And one topic that has not been addressed at all, and I think is critical, and I'm opening it up right now, on November 9th, as your mayor, will be to kick off the search for a chief of staff. This is too important a position for a political hack. It's too important a position for some young kid just out of school, inexperienced, to be trying to oversee department heads and the mayor, him or herself. I offer that we will, through the personnel office, vet candidates, ultimately the mayor's responsibility to choose this critical position of chief of staff. I'm Marty Olson, I'm running for mayor, and I want your vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Olson. First, I want to thank Paul Chenier and the day for the thoughtful questions. I want to thank each of the candidates for their thoughtful responses and for their passion and enthusiasm for this city. I am not a resident of New London. I live across the river in Ledyard. And I have learned so much about this wonderful city. It gets me excited. And I look forward to your going to the polls on Tuesday and choosing the best person for your city. Thank you all for coming, and let's give them a round of applause.